Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. It's a cold day in Nashville, February, but it's supposed to warm up today, Vonda. I think it's because you're on the show. It's going to be like 45 or 50 degrees this afternoon. So,
Well, Vice Mayor, I never knew. I knew that you were very talented, but I never knew that your next career was going to be the weather person. You going to take Leland Staten's job?
never take Leland Staten's place. But Nikki D. Ray apparently is she's pregnant, and so I mean she's gonna have to take some time off. So for that period of time, I'm happy to step in. Okay, basically my weather.
Oh yes. Well,
the weather is looking outside and going like, hey, it's sunny outside, must be warm. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Vonda McDaniel, who is president of the Central Labor Council of Nashville and Middle Tennessee, is our guest today. Vonda, thanks for being on. So usually we're just sitting here talking for a couple of minutes while people get on. I would tell you that Councilmember Berkeley Allen is on and Councilmember John Rutherford is on. So tell me about I always ask, like, what's behind your head? You got all kinds of stuff back there. I saw the Labor Council posters, you've got construction stuff back there. What is all that stuff?
So most of those are rally signs from different things that I have participated in over the years. But of course, we got a Black Lives Matter sign and then don't mess with my mail, because there was a attempt to privatize the post office, unrig the system. We had an unrigged conference in Nashville a few years back, and so I participated in that. And so, yeah, really my office is a collection of mementos from my work.
Okay. Tell me, what is the unrigged the system? What was that about?
So they had several people from all over the country. They have an annual meeting and they talk about the structures that are in place that keep ordinary working families and communities from participating in public policy. So they had lots of workshops on developing progressive public policy. They highlighted some of the local leaders in the movement in Nashville, Odessa Kelly, I can't remember her name right this second, but the woman with Workers' Dignity, just several of our local leaders and organizations. Equity Alliance was highlighted. So, yeah, it was a great conference.
Cecilia from Workers' Dignity? Is that who it was?
Cecilia, yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And then we had, our guest last week was Charlene Oliver. So from McDaniel and a new state senator. Well, we may want to talk more about unrig the system in terms of kind of some of the work that you do. Now, there is looks like a blue hard hat back there. What is that?
So that is my hard hat from when the convention center was under construction, and I would go on the site. So yes, I have a couple of hard hats that I wear from time to time when I walk on to construction sites in Nashville. So we have a lot of them. And so I often will put on my hard hat and my steel toe shoes and go see what the workers are talking about.
I may need to borrow those for the next council meeting. Would you mind letting me have those?
Oh, absolutely. Anything I can do to help the cause, Vice Mayor, I'm always happy to do that.
All right. Our guest today, Vonda McDaniel, president of the Central Labor Council of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. We're really glad that you're on. Councilmember Allen is on, Berkeley Allen, and John Rutherford is on as well. So the first question to every one of my guests, since we've been doing this show, is, Vonda, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What have you been doing all this time? Just, tell us about yourself.
Well, I always start the story of myself with my parents. My parents met in college at Tuskegee University. Well, it was Tuskegee Institute when they went. And my mother is from Texas, my father is from Alabama, and Nashville was the compromise. So they moved to Nashville when I was 3 years old. My sister was 6 weeks old. So basically, I've been here all of my life. Graduated from McDaniel High School, graduated from Tennessee State University, and went to work at Bridgestone Firestone in 1992. I got active in the union maybe about 3 years later. Started as a shop steward. Shop stewards are the folks that at the very grassroots level write grievances and help to be the face of the union on the floor. And then I was a chief steward. Then I did benefits. In 2014, I got elected president of the Labor Council. And in 2017, I got elected to the Executive Council of the AFL-CIO. The Executive Council of the AFL-CIO is composed of all of the international presidents from 55 different unions and a representative from a Central Labor Council and a state fed. So it's been quite a journey, definitely.
So did you ever think this is what you were going to do when you got out of school?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. When I graduated from college and was looking for work, American Airlines had actually located their hub here at that time. And so I went to Dallas to interview for a job with American Airlines. I get back in the middle of the night, and there was a man at the Urban League. His name was James Berry. And he said, Bridgestone is hiring, and you need to go first thing in the morning to take a test. And I said, really? You know, I'm fresh out of college with my degree in hand. I thought that it was going to be for one of those corporate jobs, but it ended up being in the plant. I was able to pay off my student loans. You know, you hear a lot of conversation about student debt, but you know, having a union card and earning union wages and having good benefits, I was able to pay off my student loans before the end of my first year. I was very dedicated about paying it off. I think I crowdsourced. I put all the money that I was making toward paying off my student debt. But no, I had no idea that my path would take me here, but it has really taken me. I've been to Mexico organizing workers, been a part of global organizing for workers. And so it has been an unexpected path, but I think that at 18, it's really a bit early to make folks make a decision that impacts the rest of their life.
Well, if it helps you, I'm still trying to decide what I'm going to do, but a little past 18. For people, let's do this. For people who don't fully understand what the Central Labor Council is, tell people what that is. What does it do? How does it interact with other unions in the city and nationally? You gave us a little bit of indication, but start with the Central Labor Council. How many people, who makes it up, that type of thing, and then we'll go from there.
So the Central Labor Council covers roughly 25,000 union members in the Middle Tennessee area and their families. And we do a variety of things. We have 40 affiliate unions that range from the school bus drivers with Metro Schools, teachers, the NFL football players, the bus drivers, school teachers. I mean, it's a really construction workers. It's a broad array of occupations. When you walk in the grocery store at Kroger, those are our union members, right? Yeah. And as a labor council, what we do is connect the work of all those individual unions and under one umbrella, and we coordinate political activity, we coordinate contract campaigns. And here in Nashville, we have really tried to elevate worker voices around the development that is happening not only in Nashville now, but in the Middle Tennessee MSA, to make sure that worker voices are included in the decisions that folks make. And in the course of that work, I've been able to really develop deep and good relationships with people like Councilmember Berkeley Allen and John Rutherford and yourself.
So the Central Labor Council, you got 25,000 plus people involved, but there's different unions that are part of that all come into the fold. Is that kind of is that a good way of saying it?
That's correct. About a third of our unions are construction. Another third are industrial. We represent the workers at the GM Spring Hill plant. And Ford, it used to be Ford Glass. I'm not sure what they call it now, Carlex or something like that. And then we represent public employees. So SEIU and the school bus drivers and the teachers each year are involved around the budget. And so the Labor Council is who convened this table.
Okay. And I'm watching the chat box. I think the question came in. It's like, are you the first? What did it say? Wait a minute, I'll go back. Are you the first woman to hold this position? Yeah.
I am the first woman to hold such a position. I was the secretary of the Labor Council actually for about 20 years and served under 4 presidents. And when the last one, he had been my mentor for many years, Louis Speck. When he decided to retire, he didn't tell me, by the way, until the day that we were going into nomination, that he was not running and that he was putting my name in nomination to be president of the Labor Council.
All right. So tell people, okay, so we got kind of an aspect of what the Central Labor Council does, but from a standpoint of what do you do on a daily basis? What are you most concerned with? What is, where your focus is having to go so that, people feel like they're getting the proper representation, but you're also paying attention to things that are happening both at the federal, state, and city level, for purposes of, fair wages and protecting benefits for workers. What do you do? What is your primary role as the president of this group?
So, Vice Mayor, every day is a different day. And no 2 days have been the same. I took over in 2014, and especially the 2 years we had virtual meetings, just like the council did. For 2.5 years, we just went back to in-person, in fact, in January. But during the pandemic in particular, the Labor Council became a trusted voice around, the struggles that workers were having with personal protective equipment. We have a lot of hospitality workers that are not organized and a part of a union, but came to the union to help to resolve some of those challenges that they were having on the job. But sometimes we are out with affiliates that are trying to organize in a right-to-work state in many workplaces that are covered by a collective bargaining agreement. That doesn't necessarily mean that everyone that is covered under that collective bargaining agreement is a member of the union. And so we spend some days assisting our affiliates in organizing in their workplace and talking to workers. During budget season, we are talking to the public sector workers and trying to organize around that. I come out of Bridgestone Firestone, joined the union in 1992. In that time, we've probably had every 3 to 4 years, what they call a contract campaign. Contract campaigns. At one time, I was negotiating at least the benefits portion of the contract, and we negotiated in St. Louis. And so I was away from home for 2 years negotiating that agreement. But the Central Labor Council supports in terms of bringing public visibility to whatever is happening with our affiliates. When there was the federal lockout a few years ago, under the previous administration, we helped to coordinate media coverage around the challenges that local workers were facing as a part of that federal shutdown. So, like I said, every day is different, but it's all about amplifying and elevating worker voices in the Middle Tennessee area.
All right, so let's break it down even further. Okay, so for people trying to understand kind of how this might work, so let's take an easy example, at least for us, and that is trying to figure out what, I guess, in terms of the budget coming up for the city, what would be, and you were kind of explaining it, but how would you go out and find out kind of what it is that people are concerned about, what you're going to be trying to push for, that type of thing? Let's take the budget and representing people as it goes through. How does that work for you all? And then we'll switch to kind of another subtopic.
Sure, that's a great question. And so as the mayor is preparing the budget, the unions that represent workers are also coming together to look at, what the revenue streams were, what they look like, what the projections are, what teachers or public sector workers are making in terms of what their cost of living. We've talked about step raises like ad nauseum over the last 4 or 5 years, but we all come together and develop a list of priorities for each budget session. That's what we do on the internal level. And then fortunately, we have some real champions on the council that from their perspective, share with us what the broader outlook is and what it is that we can anticipate. And then we try to talk to and educate our members about what the budget process is. That's one of the things that has really been a learning experience for me. And that is that lots of decisions are made on boards and commissions in the city council, and workers have no idea what those decisions look like or what goes into making those decisions. And so we try to bring them into that process early and on an ongoing basis so that they can have some real understanding about how the process works on the one hand, but number two, how their collective voice can influence and impact those important decisions and policy.
And
so
how do you do that? Because that's a problem with everything, all the stuff that the council may be working on. But you all particularly do a really good job. Like last year, I still remember some of the testimony that came before us, including the lady who brought her young daughter and really kind of socked it to us pretty well and made an impact. So, the question is, how do you get the information out to your members? And then how do you bring that emotional testimony, or how do you make that impact? Because last year it really made an impact.
So I think that every year that it becomes more important and more people engage in the process. Most working people, which is 99% of us, spend a large portion of our time in the workplace. And so when I started out as a shop steward, one of the things that was my job was to connect with members at work on important issues. And I think particularly SEIU and MEA and USW, that represents the school bus drivers, have become better and better at educating their frontline stewards to be able to talk about in the workplace on break time things that are important and impact them. And, you know, you'd be surprised at the authentic voices that come forward and share their stories, that we're able to make sure that they get the kind of, it's not about us. You know, sometimes it feels like that there's always a light on us, but there isn't. It's about making sure that worker voices are centered in these conversations. And so, yeah, we work hard at trying to make sure that workers on a day-to-day basis understand the decisions that are happening while they're working.
Okay. Well, so the impact last year did hit home. I mean, so obviously you talk, and we're just talking about from what we understand from a city council standpoint. We get, obviously the mayor gets lots of requests to put stuff in the budget. He's got to figure that out. And then it comes up to us, and then we've got to figure out if we're going to make changes or what we're going to do. And then we listen to people, and we try to figure out how to make it work with everybody asking for different things. But again, I think part of what you just said was that personal impact, the personal stories, the emotional impact, that obviously goes a long, long way. So how do you figure out each year kind of how to make that push?
I mean, I think the push is different each year. And one of the things that I haven't mentioned that is very important that really we have not been as intentional about until the last 5 or 6 years, and that is connecting with community organizations like NOAA, like Turk, Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition. We work with the universities. We work with Wendland Cook. We work with the IMF. You know, workers have whole lives. And so it is important that we organize holistically in a way that, you know, housing is a huge issue. You know, 15 years ago when I first started, if you had told me that I would be in housing advocacy meetings, I would be like, what is that? And so, yeah, each year, the strategy and the way that we prioritize, like for that year, really comes from workers. Sometimes there are surveys and internal polls that are done so that we have a good idea about what it is that workers need, and then we make that our priorities.
Well, it seems to work pretty well. I mean, the impact is felt. Sometimes, obviously, the resources are a little strained, but the resources are, I mean, that's always the issue. And I think it's always been kind of the understanding, at least my understanding, that our employees are the most important thing we have going for us in terms of making all this stuff work, whether it's Metro employees, whether it's the school folks, whoever. That's how we make these things happen. And they're very, very important to us. And, you know, with affordability and everything else going on in this city, in terms of concerns, we've got to make sure we take care of our employees. How does tell me a little bit about, particularly with the affordability and with the growth of Nashville, it's more and more expensive to live here. How does that play into how you from a central labor council deal with all the different issues, including folks that work for metropolitan government?
You know, we often hear, I believe that probably teachers are our largest affiliate that we hear from on a regular basis. And being the child of an educator, I hear from a personal perspective around like how changes in even benefit policies, which is this whole dispute between Vanderbilt and I believe it's Humana around Medicare Advantage for retired Metro employees. We just had our monthly Central Labor Council meeting, and a firefighter had a very compelling story about how that not only impacted him personally, but the folks that he is talking to within his retiree group, right? And so a lot of times what happens is that we are constantly being challenged with what Nashville looks like in terms of affordability, right? Especially for public sector workers whose cost of living adjustments, they just don't, even in the best years, they don't keep up with the rate of increase in terms of our cost of living in the area. And as a lifelong Nashvilleian, it's always a struggle, no matter how much you make, even when you have good union wage jobs, to continue to be able to live comfortably within the city footprint. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about how we can, even if that is not our primary scope of work within the Labor Council, how we can partner with those organizations that are doing good work around affordable housing and that kind of thing. NOAA and a consortium of organizations right before Christmas did a amazing conversation that brought together all kinds of folks around churches and how churches can impact, because they own property within the city, how they could be a piece of positive progress around this affordability crisis that we are feeling in our city.
Let me ask you this. This is kind of just an overall question. So affordability has been a concern obviously for a while, and it's getting worse. Affordable housing, a concern. Just the cost of living, all that stuff. You're talking about good community partners like NOAA and some other groups. But sometimes, the city is growing so fast and there are so many issues going on. Sometimes you feel like, are we really getting anywhere? And so I guess that would be my question. There are a lot of really important players in this that are really pushing pretty hard. But sometimes you go like, are we making any type of difference? Or do we have maybe a strategy, a really good strategy, when everybody's kind of pushing in the same direction to try to get some of this under control? Oh, you're muted. There you go.
I think that's where conversations like this become part of what needs to happen on an ongoing basis. Stand Up Nashville next Saturday is hosting a conversation around like not only the stadium and what that looks like for working families and how that will impact the city budget potentially, but also, the development of the East Bank. And I think that, the workers that will staff all the new businesses that come about should have a voice in how those places are shaped. And if affordable housing and that kind of thing is not centered in that development, then again, we have spent a lot of time and a lot of dollars on something that may benefit, the top 2%, but really don't cause all Nashvillians to thrive. And so I think that we have to keep having these conversations in the workplace, with our neighbors, wherever we can, so that as a community, we come up with solutions to the problem rather than a few developers in a boardroom.
Okay, so go even further than that, and that is, one of the things that I think government does not do as good of a job with as they should, and that is accountability. And we had this discussion in the audit committee the other day. It's like there's lots of grants out there, there's lots of money and funds that are going that get distributed to different places. That's the last time typically the council ever hears about this stuff. So we approve it, and then the next thing we know, we're on to something else, and you don't know what the follow-up is. So accountability. So you're talking about good program, Stand Up Nashville having a good program next week. But the question is, obviously we can have a million different programs and talk about it. How do you turn that into specific action? And particularly head of the Labor Council, that's what you do. You all make things happen. So from a standpoint from your perspective as the president of the Labor Council, how do we do a better job overall? And I'm not just picking on, metropolitan government. I'm saying there's a lot of active players in this. How do you make sure that we are addressing, problems?
So, Vice Mayor, that's a really big question that you just asked me.
All right. I just figured I'd give it for it. Yeah.
But if we eat the elephant one bite at a time, one of the things that I believe Fabian Bettany is doing around that participatory budgeting.
Right.
For me, that is a way to, number one, engage neighborhoods and communities in how resources are distributed in their community. But also it gives them a personal snapshot of what it is that as city council and the mayor's office, what they're grappling with. And the more that we can engage people at that level, I think the more we make sure that our budget and our resourcing of priorities happens, right? Because, I grew up in North Nashville. I've lived in Nashville all my life. And while everything that I wanted did not get funded in that participatory budgeting process, at least I was able to come to the same kind of understanding around budgets and priorities that you do as a family. And I think that part of the division that we see along really kind of strange, ideological, that if you brought people in a room more often, I think that sometimes that wouldn't happen. I think that COVID really made people go into their own silos in a way that it is really going to be challenging to come out of. But the only way that we do that, in my opinion, is that we provide forums like this where people that don't ordinarily, even though you and I, we talk from time to time, but people that don't ordinarily talk come together and realize that all any of us are trying to do is you know, raise our children, support our families, be able to go to the doctor when we're sick, and have a respectable retirement where we can take a vacation every now and again. That's all anybody wants.
Yeah.
And so how we get there happens in terms of developing more of a community-focused structure. If we create kind of spaces where different folks are able to come together.
Okay, so sitting there, I always get ideas that pop into my head when I'm talking and on this community conversation. And so I'm thinking a couple of things. One is a lot of the times when you have like a program, and you're right, yeah, so the people who come to the program are the same people, all right? So a lot of times it's the exact same people. You're just going from, you go from one meeting to the next, and it's like, wait a minute, those are the same people I just talked to. It's the same ideas coming forward. Then when you're talking, I was thinking about during the, this goes back years ago when Phil Bredesen was governor, and they were doing some voluntary retirements, or they had classifications. They were saying we need a certain percentage out of this group. And I remember walking through the Department of Health one day, and there were just tons and tons of cubicles where people were working, and there were people back there, but you never knew they were so quiet. And I think they were just kind of hiding, because it was, if nobody bothered them, then they could go about their jobs, do their work, get paid, and no one was going to come to them and say, you know, we want you to take the massive retirement. I'm sitting here thinking about what you said, and it's like, how do you get people who don't speak up as much or kind of disappeared during the pandemic? How do you get them re-engaged so that they do know what's going on in the city and we do listen to them? That's another very difficult question.
It is. But, you know, with this conversation that the state has filed around shrinking our city council, you know, that's the one piece that is disturbing to me, is that it's already very difficult, even though we have a very large council, admittedly, but it is very difficult for our council people to engage with all of their constituents. And most of the time, just like with the union, people don't reach out to their elected officials until they have a crisis. Mm-hmm. Or the street light is out, or they hadn't picked up their garbage, but it is rare that there are spaces where people can reimagine what their communities look like. And, you know, that's why I think that, like, neighborhood associations and, you know, those kinds of organizations that are small but are with people that should have some affinity to their neighbor are so very important. And when you have a smaller council, you know, it's not as easy to interact with your constituents as it would be, as it is now. You know, I feel very comfortable picking up the phone, calling my council person, and most of the time, I have to admit I'm guilty too. Most of the time, I don't call my council person unless it's something that either I or my parents have a concern about. But I think that interaction has to, like, be more than that. That's why I think that even those, what is that, the night out, it's a national thing where people come out in the community around the police. The police have, you know, are visible on those things. Night Out of the Crime, or I can't even remember.
Yeah,
what
it's
it is,
Night
but
Out Against Crime. Yeah, that's it. It's in August. It's the first Tuesday in August.
yeah, we should do more of that, because those are the things I think bring people out and get them to talking to each other in an informal way when it's not a crisis or when it's not a funeral. It's terrible that the only time we see people is at funerals.
Well, so and I'll give you an example as we're just talking. National Night Out Against Crime is the first Tuesday night, I think, in August, and that's a council night, and so they conflict with each other. And so our members, some of them, will show up late to the council, but I've always wondered, and I haven't done anything about it. Maybe we should. And it's like, why are we having a meeting when that night is designed to bring people together to talk? And our council was downtown. It's another opportunity that's kind of wasted, I guess. Let me go back. I've got all kinds of questions, and we're going to run out of time. As part of what you do with the Central Labor Council, and most of the time people think we're talking about salaries and we're talking about benefits and things like that. Do you all get to the point where you're also because of the concerns about the future and about the cost of living and other things, do you all dig into educational concerns? Obviously, I mean, you got the teachers, but I'm talking about training people, educating people, that type of thing. And then transit, because the transportation costs are going to go up, and as the cost of living goes up, more and more people are moving away and they can't get back in. So I know a little bit about your educational stuff. Talk about that. What do you all do to give people opportunities, first of all, for educational purposes across the board, but also if you're looking for people that need to fill jobs, how do you do that?
So that's a question that I am very excited about. And I see one of the folks that has signed into the call, Glenn Kelly, who was the recent past president of the bricklayers in the South and is now working for the North American Building Trades, which is an umbrella organization of all the construction trades. It's like the AFL-CIO is an umbrella organization for all the unions. And the Music City Construction Careers is modeled after apprenticeship readiness programs that are all over the country in communities that primarily focus on recruiting women, people of color, justice involved people, and veterans into the trades. We have 15 trades that we work with locally. And those 15 trades, our construction careers program, what it does is it gives introduction to all of those trades and then gives people the opportunity to choose the career path that is most interesting to them and matches their skills the best. And, really, I did not know about the building trades until even after I had started working. But the education program and training that federally registered apprenticeship programs offer, and the wages and benefits and retirement security that they offer as a part of their total package, it's really life-changing. And so we spend a lot of time in the community talking about not just getting a job, because there are a lot of jobs out there, but trying to create career paths for folks that really didn't know that those paths were available. So it's a program for me that is very exciting. I've been doing this work for 30 years, and I feel like I'm in the last stretch. And so I want to be a part of, the legacy of my work, that I was able to help and connect folks to a better life. And so that really is what wakes me up in the morning and gives me energy. And sometimes, kind of, you talked about it earlier, it's a very challenging environment that we operate in, but we're doing good work on the ground, and I'm very proud of it.
All right, so let's talk about a little bit more about people refer to it as MC free. Okay, it's this program, and I think when I heard about it, I thought this is so smart. And so what it, as I understand it, and then you correct me as I talk about it if I'm wrong. People can sign up, and it's like is it like a 2-week introductory program? Okay,
that's right.
And you're learning about the trades, you're learning about other things regarding getting employed and other things like that. And then it's my understanding that you can sort of, at that point, you kind of pick a trade that you're interested in pursuing. Okay. And then take me from that step. What happens then? So these are people that, again, this could be, it's career building, it's career changing. These are necessary trades. These are things that we desperately need in Nashville. And so somebody, well, okay, even go back further than that. How do people find out about it, and how can they sign up for a program like this?
So somebody was kind enough to put the link in the chat for Music City Construction Careers.
Put it in there.
And we we have an ongoing application, so we're always accepting applications. But what the 2 weeks looks like is that we work with the Financial Empowerment Center that helps folks, that they come in and teach folks around budgeting and financial impact. We do CPR and first aid training. They get their OSHA 10. We do site visits to active work sites in the area so that folks can really see on a day-to-day basis what a work day looks like in the trade. And we do a lot around math, because math is, especially if you've been out of school for a minute, math can be a barrier to success in the trades, particularly because they are always measuring stuff. You don't want somebody to build stuff that doesn't know math. So we're in the schools recruiting, but after that 2 weeks and you choose your trade, then we help to walk you through the application process. If there's a test that you have to take, we help you to get set up for that. And really, right now, we track folks for at least a couple of years. We're still a young program. And so we haven't had our first graduate, but we're coming up on that. Our first graduate, our apprenticeship programs are 3 to 5 years, depending on the trade that you're in. And so we're coming into when we will be graduating journeymen that have come through our program, got placed in our apprenticeship program, and are now full journeymen. But like I said, it really, we have a lot of partners like the Catholic Labor Network, IMF, that have really been helpful in spreading the word. And we are having a class beginning week after next, where we received 97 applications. So the word is getting out about our program, and we are really, really excited that so many people are looking for ways that they can get on a path. That we get a lot of folks that have worked fast food and in places where there's no long-term stability. And that's often when we ask them, why are you interested in a career in construction? That is a response that we get, that I want to have a career where I can take care of my family.
Okay, so I talk a lot about this program, not having all the information. I think it's really, really good. And so I tell people, when we get in discussions like this, I talk about MC free. one thing I don't know is that the 2-week program before, does that cost somebody to join in, or do they do that for free? Okay.
No, so there is no cost to the program. Mm-hmm. We are funded through a combination of ways. Our Trades Council funds part of it. We get nonprofit dollars, and some people just make private donations. But there is no cost to the participant, and we do everything that we can to make sure that in that 2 weeks, because we've had people to actually leave jobs to come to this program, and so we don't want them to have the kind of financial hardship that, we're trying to get folks out of that. We don't want to be the cause of that. The folks at SNAP ENT that work at the local United Way agency, they are very helpful and provide support for our program. And so we are funded through a variety of ways, but there is no cost to the participant.
Okay, and after you pick a trade, so somebody gets into they do the 2-week program and they go, I want to learn how to do plumbing. I want to be in the plumbing field. How does it work from them? How do you match them up to go into that field? And then tell me about kind of how the apprenticeship works and things like that.
So we work with them to make an appointment at the UA, which is our local plumbers and pipe fitters union, and help them to get into that process, get all the necessary paperwork, because you got to have a copy of your diploma, you got to have your driver's license, you got to have certain paperwork. So we help them to get all that together and go to work. The UA apprenticeship program is a 5-year program, and they have, just like a normal school calendar, they have a class that starts in the fall, and sometimes depending on the demand of the manpower demand, they may have another class that starts at some other point during the year. And so it's an earn while you learn program. People work during the day and they go to school a couple of nights a week to get their certifications and credentials training. And then after 5 years, if they've met the work hour requirement and the school requirement, the class requirement, then they become journeymen, and they can then go all over the country and work. They have a skill that's transferable, that will take them anywhere in the world.
So, so they move into, once they leave your 2-week program, depending on if everything kind of works, they move into an apprenticeship program where they're learning during the day. They are getting those skills. They're getting taught at night, but they're also getting paid and they're getting benefits. Correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
That is what I think is amazing, because what they're doing is they're learning on the job, and then they're going to get a career, hopefully, that they can go anywhere and do, and it's a necessary trade that is very important. I think the program is tremendous. All right, so we don't have much time. We have 6 minutes. I got a million other questions to ask you, but we're going to stop at 11. But let's talk about the right to work amendment that passed last year. Tell me about it. Tell me how the impact that you think it could have. Just tell me about its passage last year and what it meant to the Central Labor Council.
So the outcome of the vote on Amendment 1, Right to Work, while it was not surprising, it was disappointing. We live right to work in its the way that it works is that you are able to work under collective bargaining agreements where you receive all the benefits, but you are not required to pay for them. And so that impacts over time, the level of service that can be provided to the members, because everything that we do, there's a cost associated with it. And contract administration, there's a cost. It just really makes the playing field uneven. And what putting right to work in our Constitution did was really just double down on bad labor law. In states where there is no right to work, workers on average make 7% more. Now, that may not matter if you're a millionaire, 7%. But when you're an hourly worker, that can mean the difference in terms of being able to have personal savings and that kind of thing. So in impact, with all the opportunities that we have, all the electric vehicle work, all the infrastructure work all the infrastructure that's coming to Tennessee, we still have to spend a lot of time going out to try to organize folks into our unions and then do the work of representing them. So there's no other organization, including the chamber, that you can receive the benefits without paying the fees that are associated with those benefits. And so long term, it really, it just locks us into having more low-wage jobs than we should. There was a Princeton study done a couple of years ago, and it wasn't commissioned by anybody in labor, that talked about that in places where there was a union, that all workers, whether they were union or non-union, did better. And Tennessee is a place that has about 6 or 7% union density. And it is also one of the places where people don't have access to health care that's associated with their employment. They have fewer retirement benefits unless they pay for them themselves, and their wages are lower. So the union issue is just a quality of life issue. But we continue to do the work, and we will continue to organize. So.
All right. Well, and we have time for probably one more question. Maybe that was it. Tell me, obviously these things pass, they have impacts on everyone. Tell me short-term things that you may be working on that are around the corner that people might like to know. I mean, besides organize, anything else kind of that you all are up to that people might want to know?
So there is a lot of good things that is coming in terms of investment from the stimulus packages that have been offered. Right, we passed several stimulus passes, but it'll take 5 to 10 years for us to really feel the impact on the ground. I feel like really privileged to have been a part of the disbursement of the funds that came down, that I know made a difference for people in a very critical time. And so the fact that young people have a new appreciation for unions, there's a new energy around that. I think 70% of young people, if they were given the opportunity to join a union, they would. And so it's my job to make sure they have a union if they want one. So it's a lot of work. It's a big challenge, but I think that we're up to the task.
Well, Vonda, thank you for being my guest. This was really interesting. I had tons of questions that I didn't get to, so I'll have to call you later. But
that sounds good.
That was really helpful. There's a lot of stuff that the Central Labor Council does. We appreciate all your hard work. A lot of stuff going on, and just keep working. You're doing great.
Well, thank you.
All right.
We appreciate you too, Vice Mayor.
Well,
thank you for inviting me.
All right. Well, next week, I hope everybody has a great week. It is going to warm up this weekend. Everybody go outside and enjoy. Former Senator Brenda Gilmore is going to be my guest next week. So everybody tune in. Everybody have a nice President's Day weekend. and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Vonda.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.